That's a good question to where do you look for information about hops, different qualities about them, contributions that they would bring to beer. There are several ways to go about that. You can go, there are several hop suppliers on the internet that have lists of the hops they carried and the qualities about those hops, their flavor profiles, what aromas they have, and certainly their bitterness level, which is something to be of interest when you're making beer, because you're controlling how bitter it is by the major contribution is from your bittering addition, which is the one we'll end up putting in first. The other way to do it is to sort of reverse engineer it, because if you look at English beers tend to have certain families of hops that are very commonly used, as are German beers or Czech beers. American beers, we're very brave, we use just about everything. So it's kind of hard to work backwards from there. But if you take English beers, you look at the hops they use, those hops work well in German beer, or not in German beer. In English beer, those hops work well because they just do. They have the flavors that work well for making IPAs or pale ales. There's also some American varieties, like the one we're going to use today, Cascade, is an American variety. So it produces a lot more citrusy flavors and aromas in beer. So that's one thing that differentiates like an American pale ale from an English pale ale. And it doesn't hurt to give this a stir occasionally, although I don't know if it matters tremendously. Usually get bored waiting for it, so it's an easy way to fidget. Usually I recommend resisting the urge to start drinking at this point because you should wait till the hops are mostly in or mistakes will be made. Although in this case, you're using about an ounce of each, so whichever way you go with it, you can't mix them up accidentally. Because of the different contributions from hops, you can use different kinds of hops to give you different characteristics. Like some of them are extremely bitter. Hops are rated by, there's an acid in them called an alpha acid that is the bitter flavor it's the bitter component in hops. That's measured and identified so that when you're making beer, you can decide how much to use, because each one will vary. Cascade, this one's about 6.4%, which means that 6.4% of that volume of hops is the bitterness component. That's moderately bitter. Some extreme cases go up to 20%. So about a fifth of the hops are just bitterness, and those are just absurdly bitter. You don't want to use a lot of those unless you're trying to make one of those crazy over-the-top bitter beers, like an IPA or a double IPA of some sort. So, which is nice, and I tend to like that, but not everyone likes their beer quite that bitter.